Rats with Team 45-45 League, analyzing the game between KW Winner and King of Kings. This is played in round 2 of the Team 53 event, under 1800 section. Let's have a look. Okay. Kind of an offbeat line in a D4 opening, but it's okay. It's totally playable. Let's see how both sides respond. Okay, this is probably good for black. Just offer to maybe go into Benoni where the bishop on f4 is misplaced. At the same time, the black queen comes out to pressure b2, which white's bishop f4 has left unprotected. So a common theme is what white does is white places queen to b3, and both sides offer to trade queens and accept, and whoever takes gives the other guy double pawns but an open file. So interesting to see how these things play out. Who will give first here? Who will take first? I mean, trade queens first. Okay, black decides that, or white decides that he'll give up control of the A file and let white in. But black finds some good moves here, and now the bishop becomes just a tall pawn defending things, and suddenly black has some threats here. Knight c2 check, winning the world. Okay, so king d1. I'm not sure if that was the best move. What are his alternatives? Knight a3. Kind of ugly in a way. The knight's not really wanting to be there, but I don't know, I just kind of hate to move the king when I don't have to. And a lot of times you can't snatch that pawn, but black went ahead and did it. You know, you're just walking into a pin. Takes some guts. Let's see, if I was playing white here, I would say, let's see, how do I win that knight? c5 followed by bishop c4 would be my idea, but black actually has resources. He's going to save that piece. Anyway, I won't go into all that. But now white goes back king d1. Kind of funny. Anyway, bishop b4 check, and here's a good move by black. He's putting the rook on a square where the knight can, so the knight can get out, and that'll happen here soon enough. Okay, bishop d3, and trade, and now knight b4, and now the only thing lacking in black's game right now, everything else is fine. He's got two problems here. He's got a king that's not castled, and he's got a bishop that can't move, and he needs those to happen so that he can get that last rook into play. Theoretically, black is winning now, and he's actually taking his time, and white isn't. And if black will do that, he's really got an easy win here. He's up a pawn, even though it's a double pawn, but he's definitely got the better position here. And anyway, we'll see what happens here. Now, I think that was kind of an impulsive move, grabbing the bishop just for the knight. Perfectly logical here is just to take to play d5. The point being, it does have some ideas to it. What black wants to do is occupy d5 with a knight, particularly this knight. Let's get that knight on a better square. It's not really doing too much at the moment. Okay, so we want to do some trading. So black's planning to take here, and white would have to take with the bishop. Okay, because the knight is pinned against the rook, because white's knight on g1 is still sitting there. So d5 directly is probably better and more to my taste. Although there's nothing wrong with getting the bishop. Sometimes I think people just grab bishops because they're told that bishops are better than knights, and usually they are. But you don't always just be taking things just for the sake of taking them. You kind of want to have some deeper plans here. But there's nothing wrong with it, and black does continue with the suggested move, and it does have the bishop pair, or not a bishop pair, but really look at his bishop. It's not really all that useful in this position. This is more of a position where the knights are better, because the bishop really doesn't have a diagonal. So would have been better to keep that active knight on b4 and then get this bishop on c8 activated a little later. Anyway, nothing wrong with it. But now white's getting caught up in development, and black still hasn't castled. He still has a bishop on d7, but at least the bishop can move now. And but now the white king is decently centralized for the coming endgame. So white's gained some ground back here, but he's still worse off simply because he's down a pawn. Anyway, let's see what happens. So bishop d7, following logic, and now knight e5. Now here's the stage where what black should have just done is played king e7. Perfectly logical move. It just continues development. We don't care if we don't get the bishop versus knight advantage. We're still a pawn up, okay? But king e7, perfectly logical. What's white going to do? Take the bishop? Yeah, fine. Let him have it, okay? We can take back with the knight. Well, we don't probably want to do that, because then he can take on d5 and get the e-file with check. Might be a little bit of nuisance, but we'll just take with the king. You know, nothing wrong with this. Black is fine here. And finally, he's got his men out of the box. Okay, so I guess some of this just shows why just going for the bishop pair going for the sake of the bishop pair wasn't all that good. It let white develop, improve his king position, and so forth. But there's nothing wrong with bishop c6. We can't fault it. It's still a good move. Black is still fine. But like I say, the thing that's going to I think affects black here in a few moves is the fact that his king never got castled. So what white did here, f3 was just preventative maintenance, because bishop c6, what it does is it says to white, well, if you want to take my bishop, if you really want the bishop, let's undouble my pawns. And white doesn't want to do that if he can avoid it, so he didn't. And it does have latent threats on g2, although maybe they're not all that latent. Just consider this without analyzing. Okay, black was threatening pawn takes with check and uncovering an attack on g2, but then at some point white's going to have rook g1, and maybe he's going to have something down here. Maybe not. You know, black could put the bishop on e4 and then drop it back to g6. Just have to know these things, but fine. Bishop c6 is okay. But still, this is a position where what black needs to do is get his rook on ah8 developed. He could do it in two ways: castle or play king e7. If he does either, he's going to win this game very easily and very quickly. But knight d7 just seems to be slow, because it doesn't force white to trade on d7 and develop the king. It doesn't force that at all. And so maybe black's trying to say, I'll make trades and improve the position of my pieces. You know, you want to trade, you're programmed to trade pieces when you're ahead in material, because it just gets you closer and closer to that winning position, but winning endgame. But nothing at all is wrong with king c7 here. Nothing. You're all set to get that rook into play, and the king is safe. Okay, so anyway, he didn't do it. Knight d7, and it's still not a bad move. It's just that I think that there was better there, and this is fine. Go ahead and take the knight. It's with check. Get the attrition down, and now take this with check. Black is still a pawn ahead, and the position's opening up a little bit, but this is the point where black lost drift of the game. And what he needs to do, once again, is either castle or play king e7. If he does either, this game is over in a hurry, as I was saying. Okay, he took the pawn on e5, which is a mistake, because it just loses some time, and it leads black into making him another mistake here in a moment. But let's just consider for a moment. if we take the pawn, we're giving control of the center file to black, if he wants it. And he's going to use it here in a moment. But if we don't take the pawn, guess what? The pawn's still under attack, right? That means black has to do, white has to defend it. So let's, just for the sake of argument, play, let's not castle, because there might be some potential back rank mate. Let's just play king e7. What's white going to do? He's got 2 ways to guard the pawn, or lose it, right? Right? Well, he's got 3 ways. He can play knight c4, but that doesn't really help him that much, okay? But let's just look at the main ideas. f4. If he plays f4, black just plays rook hd8. And now the threat is to play rook check, and then we can go grab that pawn on g2 with the bishop, okay? And white's just in trouble here. Even if he comes back to c2, we can take check again and maybe grab the b pawn if white doesn't cover it, and be on the g pawn and ready to double up on the 7th rank. So what's white going to do besides f4? Well, he can play rook e1. Well, you know what? We do this anyway. We still bring the rooks over, and we still have that potent threat of rook d3 check. So that, just like I say, leaves one other move, and that is knight c4. And guess what? We do the same thing. And probably better moves. Well, you say, what about knight d6? Well, fine. I'll take on e5, because you've unprotected that square. And black has a crushing game here. So the pawn wasn't going anywhere, but sometimes we see loose pawns and we want to take them, but they're not going anywhere. It was still under attack. We can take it later. Let's get the game, complete the development, and then go in and clean up the pawns. We're not in a hurry. Okay. Okay. So it's not a bad move, but it lets white back in the game, and I'm just at a loss to words to figure out black's next move. Maybe he thought that he'd blundered. Okay, this has a double threat. Okay, the double threat is we're not only attacking the rook on e5, there's also a threat of rook a8 check. Okay, winning the rook on h8. So maybe at this point black thought that he just blundered the game away and didn't stop and think deep enough, because his next move seems to indicate that he thought he had done something wrong here. Okay. Black to play and do the best he can. Pause the video. What do you play here? Okay, you've started the video again. What black should do is just play rook d5, okay? The point is that this saves the rook and it stops the check, because on rook a8 check, you now have rook d8 and you're fine, okay? I guess black missed that. So what white will do is play knight takes b6. Well, guess what? Black's still a pawn ahead. Okay? He's still a pawn ahead. He can play rook d6. He can play even the more conservative rook d8 and follow up with king e7 and regroup. And black's going to win this ending too. It's going to take a little while, but he's going to win it. Okay? But what black did was played rook a5. I guess he thought that that he couldn't stop. That was a threat that he couldn't do anything about, and he could have, because his rook could have gone to d5. So now white just wins the exchange, and now really white has a winning position now, probably, because after taking on a5. Black only has 1 pawn compensation for the exchange, and that's generally not enough. So let's just run through the moves here and see what happens. Offer trades, can't take. Now just secure the 7th rank. And probably both sides might have been able to find some better moves here, but really black's just handed the game to white. And it's kind of a shame for black too, because white is moving so fast. He's not taking his time, and black still had enough time on the clock to find those 2 better moves, not taking on e5 and then after he did, putting the rook to d5. So sometimes we have to get in time trouble when the position gets critical, okay? But really, now black has no compensation for the exchange. It's just a matter of time for white to activate everything and reach a winning ending. And black just doesn't have any positional blockade he can set up. He doesn't. Eventually white will give back the exchange at the right time. There he did, just to reach a winning ending, and there it is. And really there's nothing black can do here. He's just in trouble. The white king is too active. And now the pawn gets ready to run, and black gets some nuisance checks, but that's fine. Now we've got the classic rook behind the pass pawn position, and we're just going to start running it and deflect the black king away. And there's nothing black can really do here. He's just reached a lost game, although you kind of hate to let the pawn advance any further, but black's in a position where some ground has to be given. The white king is going to get into e4 next. That just accelerates it. Now it's all the way to the 7th rank, and the white king is active and taking pawns, but there's really no defense, and there's none now. Black finally resigned because it's clear white's going to make another queen here in a moment. Instructive game for how not to get greedy sometimes. Instructive game for how to just use your time a little more wisely. It was a decent game. It's just one or two little errors by black let white right back in. Okay, I thank everybody for their time. We'll see you next game.